All right, thank you. Thanks everybody for being here for Construction Tech Tuesday. We're really excited to have Mariana Pickering and Enrico Bonilauri from Emu to present. The Passivhaus Accelerator is a collaborative online platform for sharing innovation and thought leadership in passive house design and construction. We publish articles and interviews, produce weekly virtual confabs with passive house pioneers from around the world, and elevate the work and programming of the passive house movement's leaders, practitioners, and organizations through interviews, articles, social media campaigns, videos, and podcasts, and so much more. Our aim is to catalyze zero carbon building by accelerating the adoption of passive house building. With our co-hosts, Sean St. Amour, Kevin Brennan, and Mark Willey, we have launched Construction Tech Tuesday to share the technical, the technique, and the technology of passive house construction tech. Each week, we'll welcome guest practitioners to dive into the details of practice with the builder and tradesperson as our target audience. We welcome folks from all corners of the construction and design world to join us each week. And we're really excited to learn about passive house training and the importance of honing technique in passive house practice from Emu. And we also are excited that there's an ecosystem of passive house training and that's growing up around the world. And so we're just going to share a few examples of that. And I wanted to have Luis Becerra from Passive House Canada kick that off. Luis.
Thanks, Zach. Let me get my presentation going here. Just bear with me for a second. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, guys. So my name is Luis Bezerra. I'm the manager of the Education, Training, and Development at Passivhaus Canada. I would like to thank you, Passivhaus Accelerator, for the opportunity to share our courses here with you guys. So it's going to be very quickly. This is what's happening in March, April, and May of 2021, Passivhaus Canada. I'm going to share this with you guys in the link as well. So for March 2021, we have a pathway certification that just started yesterday, which goes with 128B and C, but we also going to be offering some more courses, which is 128 started as well. The 120B, which is understanding and working with PHP, we're going to have a class start on March 13th. It's on Saturday. So if you're too busy during the week, and you would like to have some time to study with PHP, there's a good opportunity for you to have a look on the Saturday class. And also we're gonna have a week class starting on March 22nd. As well, we're gonna have the course called Understanding Building Codes. That's Cracking the Codes with Mark Bernhardt. We're gonna talk about the BC STEP code. We're gonna talk about Passive House. We're gonna talk about the Canadian National Code. So it's a good opportunity for you to understand a little bit where we are with the codes here in Canada. We're also going to have the introduction to Passive House high performance building. So if you've never had any training with Passive House and you'd like to know a little bit about it, that's the one for you. And we're also going to have the building enclosure control layers. So this is one with Graham Finch from RDH, where we're going to deal with the air barrier system and material selection. So starting on March 26th. We also started a Cold Climate webinar series on March 3rd. So that's also a good opportunity if you're interested in taking a look on cold climate and construction. And last but not least, in March, we have the building conversation with our CEO, Chris Ballard, which is going to take place on March 17th. So that's free for you to watch as well. I'm going to jump this. I'm going to put this PDF file on the chat in a little bit. So for April, normally we have one pathway to certification happening each month. So if you're not able to attend the one in March, you're going to be able to attend the one in April. Our schedule, they always change. It's not like 8 days a week. So you're at 7 days a week actually though. So normally you can have from 2 days a week. So we have 3 days a week. So the best way, it can actually suit your schedule. In April, we're also going to have the how to identify, drive down the embodied carbon in buildings. That one is really important. I know it's something that Passive House International Standard doesn't tackle in a way, but we are at Passive House Canada, we do worry about the embodied carbon as well. So we also have a very busy schedule. I'm not going to go through all of this again. I just like to thank you once again for the presentation. And here are some more courses that you might take with Passive House Canada. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Thank you very much. and I'll pass on to the next one. Thank you, Zach, Mark, Kevin, and my good friend Sean as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Luis.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm lucky. So for those who don't know me, Sean Sanamore, I'm in Vancouver, BC, where I'm involved in the BCIT's Passivhaus Tradesperson course, and I'll throw that link in the chat in a moment. Again, great to be able to connect to builders, to teach them the 5 Passivhaus principles, talk about actual building science, and really dive into the details. So great that we're kind of through. I think COVID's allowed all of us to kind of collect and collaborate, which I think is super important. And I've had the opportunity to take one of the Emu classes when I was in Pittsburgh, and they offer a fantastic course, and excited to see what we have got going on today. So over to you, Kevin.
I'll rewind. I'm Brennan. Brennan Insulation and Airtightness now. But for the past 6 years, I've been teaching Passivhaus Tradesperson for the Association for Energy Affordability and the Passivhaus Academy. We brought the training from Ireland to the US here. I shared a great experience of going over Ireland with people like Tim McDonald, Sandra Roller, Sam McAfee. He brought his thermal imaging camera, and we created this great group of people that wanted to learn about the trades. And then that group of people then came to the US and tried to spread the tradesperson training throughout. And we've been fighting the hard fight of trying to train people, and I've been teaching it, and it's been a great experience. And I've learned more from teaching about Passivhaus than I ever could have learned from actually trying to work and do on projects. So anyone that's out there that is interested in training, put your foot out, say, yeah, I can fake it to make it for a little while, and we can get the ball rolling. But when you have your eye on the prize, which is Passivhaus, and the community around you to support you to answer your question, it's hard not to achieve your goals. So I look forward to Mariana and Enrico's presentation, and let's start the conversation about how we get more people trained and more thinking fingers in the world executing Passivhaus.
Awesome. So my name is Mark Willie. So glad to be here tonight. As Sean mentioned, BCIT, Kevin mentioned AEA, Luis mentioned Passivhaus Canada. I am mentioning our friends at FIAS. So they have their CPHB on April 6th, as well as on May 10th. There will be links in the chat. So the point of this is that there's so many facilities offering this, but the reality is we need so many more. Years ago, I attended one of those USGBC Green Build events. It was in Chicago, and there was this booth, and Emu was there. And
forgot about that.
Yes. So I was like, oh my gosh, people are training. I had only known the AEA group out of New York with Kevin. And when I saw that, I was like, well, Colorado is representing. This is fabulous. So fast forward, here we are virtually this past year, and groups like Emu have been able to do some trainings virtually. We all know it is a pleasant experience to be able to do it in person. So I'm thrilled tonight that we can welcome Mariana and Enrico in their training space. So each of you can get a glimpse at what goes on in these trainings. And in case you didn't read your registration when you sent it along to Passivhaus Accelerator, this is a 4-hour. So that's 4 with a PH. So buckle up and please mute yourselves. Please load up the chat with all the people you've had trainings with and with all the trainings you're going to have. And the microphone is now yours, Mariana and Enrico.
Thank you, Mark. Well, we are really excited to be here. It's really great to see, the word ecosystem was used a lot. And I think that's one of the first things we always tell students is the reason we're doing training and the reason that we love doing it is the impact we can have on building this entire community. And as you all know, to get a successful Passivhaus build, you need to have an integrated team from the start. So it starts with training and education and awareness. So should we start off just introducing ourselves a little bit? Yeah, sound good? Okay. So my name is Mariana Pickering.
I'm Enrico Bonilauri.
And we actually met at our University of Sydney Master's Program in Sustainable Design ages ago, and had an architecture firm in Italy for about 8 years. And as architects and designers, we very quickly found Passive House as a standard we wanted to adopt as our own internal benchmark to replace building code. And when we started doing that, we came up against the reality that you can design anything however you want to design it, but you may hit problems when you have a builder team that's unfamiliar with it. And so a lot of our extra time was spent on builder education, to the point that we got really passionate about that. When we moved the company to Colorado, you know, we looked at kind of where in the US there were some passive house movements already picking up a lot of momentum, and the East and the West Coast were quite well represented, but the middle of America was not. And if anybody's been to Colorado, you know, it's perfect climate for showcasing Passive House and all its wonderfulness. So we came here and started doing the CPHT class for PHI. So we're accredited with PHI to offer CPHT. It's the Certified Passive House Tradesperson designation. And we do the course in person, but we also have it online. And then as a second step, you can take our 2-day in-person passive pod workshop, which is primarily what we're going to talk about today. And then the third step is that you take the exam. And our workshop is open to anybody. We are standard agnostic and standard open. So anyone who has already taken an accreditation course and is certified something, PH something, let us know. We'd love to have you in a workshop here in Colorado. I think we really want to emphasize the importance of taking the theoretical coursework and moving that into the hands-on realm. You have anything to add?
Yeah, we developed the workshop autonomously from the original learning objectives. So the theory is covered in the CPHT course, but we felt like teaching builders and teaching professionals in general was kind of limited in just the PowerPoint presentation format. So we designed our own follow-up content, which is the workshop we're going to talk about today. And we literally developed the pods, which we're going to cover in a second, around specific learning objectives from the course, so that you get a chance to try out different products that would work similarly in different applications for air sealing, for insulation, in a brand neutral environment. We cherish the companies we work with and we get donations from, but I think it's very important for us to maintain a brand neutrality in the approach, at least at the beginning, so that builders and participants of the course understand the why we're doing certain things, why we're air sealing, why we're air sealing in certain locations of the assembly. And that is, we've done a lot of research as far as climate-specific best practices. We show that in the big textbook that we have, but also we show that in the workshop. So
yeah, so I thought maybe we would, and y'all will have to let me know if there's stuff in chat that I need to be paying attention to, but I thought we would kind of run through, you know, the learning objectives of why is it important to invest in training as a builder, and you know, why do we have so many builders that see that importance once they start trying to work on Passive House and need that integrated team. So I was going to kind of go through what kinds of subjects we like to touch on in training. And then I was going to put Enrico on the spot. And as I go through that, when there's something that relates to the pod, we're going to fly you over there and show you the different learning objectives from the pod. Okay. One thing that he already mentioned, but it's important to understand kind of the difference between this type of training and, for example, like product demos that you would get from manufacturers. There are a lot of really great product demo classes that you can do to learn, you know, best practice taping for certain things. That's not really what we focus on. We focus on the why of the building science behind it. not so much on the particular product, but on the overview of all of those products and why you're picking certain things over other things. Why is it important for the whole team to know where the air barrier is? Why is sequencing important? And one of the ways we address that with the pod is we have job role simulation. Do you have your little flippies?
Yeah.
So when you get into a pod team, you get into a team of 4 to 6 people, and everybody's got a role. And this is super important because in reality, there is a supervisor and there's somebody he's going to hire to do the installation, or she, and there's someone he or she is going to hire for air sealing, and there's someone who's going to be installing windows. And, you know, those of you who've done passive projects, you know that the communication will make or break that completely. So one of the things we try to simulate in the pod experience is that for every unit of the pod workshop, there's a supervisor who's in charge. They have a manual where they have to turn in documentation to PHI to go ahead and move on to the next unit. And they have to make sure that everybody on their team knows what they're doing before you jump in there and start messing things up, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that's a little bit different about our training. The other thing is that it really is kind of an extension of the textbook. So it's not, you know, your typical wall mock-up where you're looking at an actual real life installation detail. It's really designed to address the whys that we look at in the coursework as well. So, you know, nobody's going to go live inside one of these little things, although we've had people try. And, you know, and then at the end of the Passive Pod workshop, there's usually, you know, a few teams. And here, Enrico, step back for a second. I just want to point out this guy on the left here is one of the Passive Pod teams. So this is one of the student teams. They've made this pod out of all of the products that have been donated to us. And maybe at the end of this, Zach, we could show all of the different companies that have donated to us, donated their high performance products to the workshop. Then on the right, you'll notice it looks a little different. That's the code pod. Boo. Everybody say hiss. I'm kidding, kind of. But the code pod we created for the 2016 IEC 15 IECC code, but so little changed that it actually still complies with the 2018. So we use that as a comparison for testing the pods at the end. And there's the slide. Thank you, Zach. So these are all the great companies, manufacturers that donate high performance products. You know, we're really lucky to have so many different types of products that the students can get their hands on, especially membrane packages and actual high performance passive house level windows. A lot of the students, this is the first time they get to install and play with actual passive house level windows. So thank you to all of them. And shall we investigate a pod?
Yes.
Any questions before I move on, or are we not doing Q&A right now? We'll do that after. Okay.
So if you can pause for a sec before we jump in. The two pods, the code pod and the passive pods, are designed to have the same net space inside. That is why we build buildings in the first place, to have spaces that are inhabitable. But as you can see, one is considerably beefier than the other one because they comply each. One is with the PHI cool temper climate typical U values, so a certain amount of R values for insulation, whereas the code pod has the prescriptive path to R values for the 2015 and 2018 code. So there's difference in the individual components, and the results are significantly different. We're going to see at the end of this kind of a comparison testing that we do. The bottom line is that the pods are designed to be fully enclosed envelopes. So at the end of the workshop, we fully air seal and enclose the pods, and we test and see how they work as a building. So each pod is 6 pieces. It's basically a panelized system, and each piece is designed around one specific learning objective, but then we put them together and we air seal them to see how they perform. So we can start the fly through.
Yeah, well, first, Zach, could you pull up the course curriculum list so everybody can see all the different topics that are important to talk about with builder training?
Yes. Here we go. This one?
Yes. Okay, so these are all the different units of the course. And, you know, we really wanted to take the international best practices that we'd learned from PHI and from working in Australia and working in Europe, and really kind of address how these things relate specifically to the North American market. So we built this curriculum over the past, 3 or 4 years. We just actually tomorrow, we are launching the Australian curriculum with the Australian Passive House Association. Their crew is kicking off tomorrow night. So the focus is really to try and take those international best practices and look at how they apply to us in the United States and Canada. And so these units, the first unit, we go through Passive House basics. The second unit is really, really fundamental and important. And I personally get really passionate about it. I feel like all builders need to know, we call it the economics, but it's really more about the value of Passive House and how to communicate the value of it.
Yeah, in fact, from this year, 2021, we changed the title to Passive House Economics and Value Proposition, because we try to shift the focus much more towards value than just energy savings.
And then we go through thermal insulation and thermal mass. And we added thermal mass to the curriculum because we get so many questions in Colorado about thermal mass. But Enrico can address that when we look at the pods. And then we look at thermal bridges. Then we look at windows and transparent components, in which Enrico always talks for far too long because he loves windows. And then we do a section on existing buildings and retrofits. Then we look at air tightness and moisture management. Then we look at mechanical ventilation and heat recovery. And then we look at efficient heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. As a last unit, we have a quality assurance exercise where we ask the builders to really kind of explore sequencing and quality assurance via sequencing. So it's a lot of photo identification of sites and making sure that things are going the right way. And then we end with sample exam questions, because we are trying to prepare everybody to be able to get accredited so that we can grow that ecosystem that we talked about. And yeah, we are pretty happy with our pass rate. We have a 96-point-something% pass rate with our curriculum right now on the international exam. I think internationally it's around 87 to 89%. So we're really happy that most of our students go at it really, really well. Okay, Zach, thank you. And I will fly around the pods now for you guys. I'll try to anyway.
So I'm gonna rotate the pod and then you can.
Sounds good. Bear with us. So all of the panels, we provide them to the students. The frames are already ready to go, but it's obviously disassembled. So this is an assembled one with the back panel out. And everybody gets to look at me. Hi.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
So we start with the bottom. This is the first unit of the workshop that we address, and we install insulation. This is clearly, imagine these are individually panelized pieces of the pod. So participants install insulation in the floor joist cavity first, and they have to insulate around the wastewater pipe. Then, and that is about insulation, learning about compressing insulation, what matters and what not. We talk about thermal bridges or floor joists. And the unit after that is looking at specific thermal bridges. If you want to point here, we intentionally have 2 studs sticking out of the roof to show the different heat flow occurring through wood versus steel. In the course, we teach the difference between mice and elephants as far as thermal bridges, and this is where we show how they actually perform.
You might need to explain what mice and elephants are.
Yeah,
sure. So Enrico always talks in class about how your thermal bridges, I might be yelling into the microphone here, sorry guys, but about how your thermal bridges can come in the form of mice or elephants, and important or not important, or weighted heavy or not. And you want to pay attention to the elephant in the room, but you can let a few mice run around, and it might not be cost effective to deal with all the mice.
Yeah, so the long story short of what we are trying to put forward with our training is that if you look online at all the resources that are available about Passive House, you can read that you have to eliminate all thermal bridges. And that is not necessarily true as long as the thermal bridge does not cause an issue with condensation. And we address that extensively in the course by means of explaining the temperature factor, and that describes the risk for mold condensation.
So let's see what they did on the passive pod to those.
So for the passive pod, you can come around this way. We teach them to insulate the steel stud because that would cause a significant thermal bridge with risk of molten condensation. Whereas for the timber, we show that it is not necessary. So that is also a way to try to convey what is needed and what not, because if you do know what you need, it's going to be more cost effective to achieve passive.
Right. And that determination is based on good modeling and planning and designing ahead of time. Right.
Correct. Yeah. So we try to steer away from the prescriptive checklist for passive house, because this is a world where if you are willing to pay more money, there's plenty of people willing to help you with that, but you don't necessarily get the performance you're looking for. So that is the first way to try and make your project, your passive house project, more cost effective. And of course, this has different connotation in warm climates than it does in cold climates. So that is kind of another piece of the puzzle. After that, the next step is we look at some penetration. So if you come down here, this is a side panel. We show a penetration. So the air barrier here is the smart vapor retarder.
My camera work is leaving something to be desired, y'all.
And we have a penetration of the air barrier. So this is the first exercise we do with the air barrier. And we have a conduit penetration. And we explain, basically we do a pencil exercise around the pod and say, where is your air barrier? And any penetration you need to air seat. So this is the first one. The next step is a window install, which is a lot of fun. And I think we have a video of somebody.
Oh, we do. Yeah. Zach, I don't know if you're ready to do that right now. I can pause ours.
Yeah, absolutely. Which one?
So there's one that's called window install and there's one that's called window taping. And we can show both of those real quick. They're not very long, just little clips from
the install first and the taping, yes.
So the install one first. And these little videos are from our Teton region passive house, passive pod workshop that we did last summer. It was great. It was outside with this beautiful view. So the teams kind of have to work through different installation concerns that come up, not just with any window, but with passive house windows specifically. And Enrico, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
Before we jump on the next video, if we can go back to the camera here, I want to show the front of the window, if that's an option.
Can you rotate it around?
Actually, yes. So this is, we have different types of passive house windows. The ones that we have installed right now, this is a tilt and turn. So for a tilt and turn, in order to enhance the performance, you want to insulate over the frame. And this is something that we have, if you're not confused. Mm-hmm. So this is something that we are a little bit sneaky in our textbook intentionally, because
Enrico likes to be sneaky in his textbook. You have to be careful.
But, I then reward people.
He does. He rewards people who find the sneakiness.
Yes. So in the manual that we provide the supervisor and to the teams, we show to insulate over the frame, and this is what we have here. So basically,
can I just say real quick, every team does this in a totally different way. So we just pulled out one of the pods, but we've had so many different ways that teams address this detail. Yeah. And that's part of the fun of having the different teams, is you get to see how other groups are doing it and talk through that.
That is something that is extremely rewarding as teachers, because you get to meet a lot of smart people coming to take the training, and you see how they, as thrown into a job site and faced with different problems, they all come up with their own solution. So that is,
and every single workshop, there's something new that we haven't seen the time before. Yeah. So as to what Gavin was saying, you learn more from watching students than.
Basically, whenever we finish up a workshop, the pods are fully sealed, and then we wait until the next workshop to strip them down and open them up. And it's like opening a box of chocolate, because you never know what they've done.
Well, literally, we had one student lose his wedding ring inside the installation one time. Yeah.
Anyway, so this is an example of how you insulate over the frame of a tilt and turn window. And in a second, we're going to go to the other side and open it. But the way to do that is to improve the performance of the install window. That is something that is very important for passivhaus. Something that is very tricky, intentionally, is the bottom side of a tilt and turn window has weeping holes. So if there's any water leak into the window, it will drain out at the bottom onto a window sill that is not represented here. So we don't cover this in the instructions on purpose. So we basically force our participants to go over this and try to understand how the window works, and then we review the exercise together. But basically, every other pod comes with the insulation over the window sill, and we have them remove this as an exercise because this is how a window performs.
Great.
If you want to rotate.
Should I have him show the taping video while you're rotating?
Yes.
Zach, can you show the taping thing, please? It's just another little snippet from one of our workshops. And again, all the teams kind of approach it in different ways. So one of the things that's great about having a lot of different types of products donated is they get to try it out with a lot of different types of tapes. In this case, he's using one of the paper tapes that was donated, which, you know, you have different considerations than some of the more flexible ones. And yeah, that's about it. Cool. And then go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to dive in with me.
I'm diving in with you.
This is what a tilt and turn looks like. So it is inwards in swing. This is actually a very cool window. And it also has an option to tilt only for ventilation in the summertime. And so this drains to the outside. So that's why having the proper design and installation of those weeping holes is very important. And you do want to have your crews aware of that because they may accidentally or intentionally seal those weeping holes, and that would like damage the way the window performs. So that is something that is very important to do. Other things that we see here, we have this is a register for a Zender ventilation system. We don't install an ERB, of course. This is too small, but we see different types of ducts. This is a semi-rigid, and we also have some flexible ducts that will fit in a 2x4 wall, for example.
And then we've got some videos of us taking apart ERBs with the students too.
Yeah, that is always
we'll do that later.
Other things that you can see here, we have a heater that we used once the pod is fully sealed with the north panel also installed. The pod gets completely sealed, and then we warm them up, and we measure the temperature and relative humidity inside the pod as the pod goes up. So we have a way to show the relative humidity changing as the temperature goes up. That is part of the building science that we teach as part of the course. And then we have the pods competing because once they are heated up at the same temperature, we unplug them and carry them outside and let them cool down. And the one that stays the warmest after overnight wins the Olympics. So
right.
Jump to that.
Yeah. So let me turn myself around real quick and prop us up again. Zach, if you could get the other videos ready. So what he's talking about is on the last day of the pod workshop, the students all, you know, finish their passive pods. We've got the code pod ready to go. And we do 3 different tests. So the first is the smoke test. And I think we have a couple of small clips of just Enrico filling the pods with smoke and then the guys trying to find all the leaks. And, you know, every team declares that there are leaks on the other people's pods all the time. So it gets kind of contentious. When we first started, great. And I think there's one more small clip. When we first started doing the workshops here in the States, I tried explaining to Enrico that Americans can be competitive and you really have to have the rules down, you know, and he you know, he kind of poo-pooed that a little bit at the beginning, and then he saw how it went down. They get very competitive. So they're filled with smoke at this point, and we're just kind of, everybody's walking around all the different pods.
That's the window. He gave us a faulty window.
But it's fun. So that's the first. You can stop it, Zach. I don't think much else happens besides them arguing over leaks at this point. And then the second test is an infrared. We take the infrared camera out and look at all the different pods. And really, honestly, they're the biggest difference that baffles all the students is when they look at the code pod compared to the passive.
Do we have the infrared photo for the?
We do, but I didn't share it with Zach, so okay. I'll look for it for the after hours for you guys.
And then the third is the resiliency test, where we heat them all up to the same temperature and roll them outside and leave them overnight. And fortunately, a lot of our workshops have gotten snowed on. So it's kind of fun to see that happen. And I think, Zach, you got a slide. It was of the passive pod testing. And there are a couple of graphs that we can show you what happens with the code versus the passive. Yeah, there you go. So so this is from the one on the left is the November 2019 Pod Olympics and the 2020 February one. But the November one, the temperatures were lower. It was a milder winter weather, so it wasn't as big of a difference, but you can still see there's a 12-degree difference between the code pod and the passive pods that were both very close to each other by the next morning. And then in the other one, I think this is the one that was a little bit more extreme that it got snowed on. And you can see that the code pod dropped. I can't remember if it was this one or another class that actually dropped below freezing that night, whereas the passive pods stayed up in the 50s.
Yeah, this one shows like the code pod going down in like 35 maybe. So if not freezing, it's like close. But you can see like with the cold spell we just had a few weeks ago all over the country, you know, you lose. This is a scenario where you lose power, and how is your building performing? This is the building that starts warm and is left to the environment without heating. So you can. This is proof of concept that passive house buildings have a much higher thermal resilience. And
I think it just has a really big impact on folks that haven't really thought about time constant before. So it's a fun thing. Okay. So I'm going to unshare for a second on that one, Zach, and then we'll, are there any other things you want to show on the pod? We should probably wrap up for questions.
I think we're good. We didn't cover the North panel, which is the last one that has the more complex air sealing exercises. So we show some exercises with multiple conduits, you know, a broken floor joist, how do you air seal that, and, you know, just more fun. This is the last panel they work on before they start assembling it. So it just builds on itself. And hopefully by the time the team reaches this point, they have already a process down where they know the taping and the sealing properly.
All righty. I can't think if there's anything else, but we can probably, the hosts, if you guys have questions from stuff we talked about before, we could do that, or I will hand off to you guys. Thank you.
You do have questions, but go ahead, Mark.
I think we start with a toast. That was wonderful, y'all.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Nice work.
Yeah,
Cheers.
There's a slew of questions that are out there, but I wanted to say, when you dive into those pods, this is the meat and potatoes that we all enjoy, and the giggling of the teams trying to find the flaws with the pH of the other team is epic. It shows camaraderie, and it shows that they understand the nature of what they're trying to do, right? It's
For sure.
Work out. So
the camaraderie is such an important thing, because, you know, Enrico and I we still work all the time with people that we studied with when we were students. And we see that so much in the students that graduate together, those classes, you know, they support each other all the time with questions and bouncing ideas off each other. And
yeah, in fact, when we get teams from companies coming to the workshop, we break them up so they get to meet more people. That is intentional, because we want that weaving of the community working together.
Perfect. I hand the mic over to Kevin, and that's going to take about 40 minutes. So grab your drinks.
Thanks, Mark. It's always great to see other teaching and training styles, but to see how humans interact the same. You know, the classes I've taught, the fun the guys have and the women, and have doing the workshop, it really brings out like the community of building, you know, I mean, nothing's really done on your own. And some of the most influential people that I've worked with in Passive House, I met at that first course I took in Ireland with Tomas O'Leary. You know, I mentioned Sandra, Tim McDonald, there's Adam Romano was there, you know, people that are lifelong friends to me. And it's great to see that experience shared. And, you know, I always say it's the thinking fingers. You learn the theory, then you practice something, and then you prove that it works, and you say, yeah, that works, and you get people to agree with you, and it's like, yeah, I'll try that again. And you know, it's the training. I can't wait to get back to training in real life. You know, I mean, in my day job as a fireman, we train all the time, and you know, like in construction, we're in silos, we're away from each other. It's like, don't come too close to me, but we're still working. And you know, I hope training comes back on. And good to see that you guys are trucking away, and sign me up to go teach in a beautiful environment like that is, because the Bronx doesn't look like that.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the COVID considerations are huge for trainers right now. And I think that's one of the reasons we, you know, continued developing the passive pods even into the pandemic, is we've got to find ways as trainers and as teachers to be flexible with this new normal situation here. So we've got to come to them more often and make it more flexible for them to learn what they can online, and then follow it up with practical. And you know, as you guys all know, it's tricky right now.
Yeah, you guys are doing an amazing job, and keep up the hard work and get it done. You know, I mean, the people I work with, we're still trying to figure it out of how we can execute training and keep things going, but buildings are happening. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive into some questions, because there's a lineup here, and I'm gonna keep this thing going on. So, Michael, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
Michael
Ask your
K,
question.
correct? No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to see were the performance comparison published anywhere, because it's an outstanding side-by-side comparison, but I'd like to have performance data, if that's available, posted anywhere.
I don't think we've actually formally published it, but that's something we should do. You're talking about the pod results?
Yeah, pod versus code.
Yeah. We've written like short little blog posts on it, but we haven't written anything super formal on it.
Yeah, we haven't.
But that's a good idea, and we will look into that.
But I think really the prescriptive path is that the walls are R19 in the code, right? Or
it is. It follows the prescriptive path originally from the 2015, but it's pretty much the same as the 2018 code. Yeah, so R values and U factor for the window, an attempt for air sealing to 3 ACH. There's no
right. We can't. It's hard to measure. Obviously, we can't do full on blower door tests on these, but we kind of simulated on the code one what that would look like in this small structure. Really more to see the qualitative, you know, to see the smoke test results for students to be able to see where the smoke is coming out and what kinds of leaks to be aware of.
And the eye-opening experience for a lot of people, code to Passive House is minimizing or eliminating the thermal bridges. You know, that to me, that's the aha moment of training. And then the other aha moment I see in training a lot of times is window placement, how you can take a high performance window, put it in the wrong location, not wrap the frame, and turn that into a regular code window. And that to me, and to everyone sharing that knowledge, is that it's window placement, installation, and how you install it. Is it thermal bridge free or not? So
yep, very good point.
Yeah, good question, Michael. And I mean, just to go on to, sometimes we harp on code. I mean, code is, yes, the minimal, and we should be moving towards it, but code's also there for safety and some of the other reasons why the code's there. But as we kind of dive into the building science, we just know a little bit of effort, and you can make that wall and then assembly do a lot more than just that. So, all right, Mr. Adam White had a quick question. Madam, you still there, or are you off to bed, or are you playing with your goats? It's just a quick question too. Is just again the timing of the events typically, like how long is the course, so forth.
Oh yeah, so So again, there's 3 steps. There's the course, the workshop, and then the exam. The course, when we do them in person, which we haven't done an in-person one in a while, but when we do them in person, it's a 2-day course, full day. Right now, at the beginning of 2020, so in spring of 2020, we got everything online. So now it's completely self-paced, on-demand, online. There are 10 units, like I said, because it's self-paced, people take a little bit, different times with that, depending on how much extra research you like to do and such, but I would give, an hour or 2 per unit. In addition to the on-demand, when you sign up for the on-demand course, we also have a weekly Q&A session with Enrico or whoever the crew trainer is on that. Just so that, you're not totally on your own on demand. You can submit questions on there and everything, but every week it's good to have a point to not just talk to the teacher, but also meet the other folks in your class and have a little bit of exchange there. So when you sign up for the on-demand course, you get those live Q&As with the teacher as well. Then the Passive Pod workshop is 2 days itself, 2 full days as well. So if you were to do the whole thing, it would be 4 days. And the workshop, right now we're doing them here in Denver because we can control the environment a little bit more for COVID purposes, but they're a very mobile workshop unit. So as long as we've got 15 people or more, we can bring the trailer of pods to wherever it needs to be.
We've done that in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming.
Yep. And then the exam is a 3-hour exam online. And that's the PHI accreditation.
Excellent. All right, keep going. You know what, Mark, do you want to pose a question? Because I know the next couple questions might be long, and so timing wise. Mark is still muted, so he's having a lovely conversation with himself.
You want me to pose a question?
Yes, it's that time of the hour.
I'm gonna give Mariana and Enrico a break to breathe. And my question is, Sean, who is your tailor? Because Mental Man is looking dapper tonight.
I'm really lucky because my wife's aunt made it for me, and it is spectacular. It's actually got silk lining on the inside. It is comfy. So yeah,
it looks like a kind of a sticky tie.
Well, it can be depending on your things you need to do. So, but yeah, here's the liner. See, silk. Yeah, pretty lucky. So I'm comfy here, enjoying this episode.
And that's right. Open, right, Sean?
It is. So it's just nice. I'm nice and comfy.
Back in the early 80s, Michael Stipe wore a newspaper outfit on stage to accept an award. And I think you put Michael Stipe to shame, and that's a big step. Or
like Lady Gaga when she wore the meat sandwich dress. That's what I was thinking, Mark.
Thanks, Harvey.
Wow, that's a lot closer.
We're not after hours.
We're not at the overtime yet.
In the first hour, and there's no meat sandwiches. Hang on a second. So if we're at 6:50, Sean, are we getting to the point where we should hand this over?
Well, we would be asking about mentors.
So I think Mariana and Enrico, would you like us to put a pin in that and take it another direction and then
we just forgot to give you photos.
Okay, so how about you talk about it? And then when you're done, we're going to have someone else also share a mentor. So you guys have the stage right now. And please tell us about these people and how it is that they came into your lives.
Okay, so the two people I have in mind, more as colleagues and that became friends after working on different projects together than mentors per se. One is Nicola Lucci, and the other one is Tabba. So respectively, site supervisor and master mason of a few projects we worked on together. And really, I spent so many hours before the crack of dawn on site, like through the cold and wet, and basically doing detailed review, measuring what job was done and was not done. They got a few building certified passive house without any previous training. The Talbot, the mason, came up with its own way to air seal better mortar joints. That was amazing. Just friends that are like,
They're kind of builder philosopher types.
yeah, and that is something I'm very thankful, because whenever we now teach, that is all based on the hours and thousands of hours we spent together, the three of us, going over details and figuring out how to air seal something. That it was a very peer relationship that was very nourishing for my personal growth as a professional. So that's something I cherish very much.
I thought about this a lot. I have a ton of people that I would want to talk about, but I might go back to the beginnings. When we were students at University of Sydney, I had odd little architecture jobs for summer internships and things like that before, but my first, grown-up job was for a firm out of Neutral Bay, just north of Sydney, called Sanctum. And Jamie, who the owner of it, he had taken the same master's degree that I had years before me, but I think we ended up using a lot of what I learned in that experience in that small architecture firm to grow our architecture firm in Italy later. And I don't even know that I totally processed it at the time that that's what I was doing. And I think the early experiences you have with your first jobs and your first careers, you're absorbing so much more than you even realize at the time by whoever you're working for. And I was very fortunate in that he was running a great little studio and really was a good boss and a good business manager as well. He would take us all out to lunch when we met goals. And, he just taught us a lot of how to run a good, healthy business. So that was kind of who I thought of.
Those are both really, really touching. If you do come up with the photographs,
Yes.
please share them with Zach and Kevin and Sean and myself, and we'll make sure to point those people out on the accelerator platforms. I would like to have everyone mute for a second and pass the microphone to Zach, because he also has a mentor in his life that we need to take the time and acknowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to acknowledge Sam Hagerman, and I have some sad news for folks who knew Sam. Sam passed away this weekend, and Sam was a friend and a colleague, a mentor. He was my boss for 6 years when I was at Hammer in Hand, and it's a loss for me, of course, but a loss for the community and for the Passive House builders and practitioners who Sam and Sam's work have inspired over the last decade. So I'm going to just take a few moments. Please, I apologize for the time, but I want to acknowledge him for all of us, and also I want to do this just because I know that he would smile to think that this community that he cares so much about are remembering him in this way and saying goodbye. So Sam, as I mentioned, I first met him at Hammer in Hand. Hammer in Hand about 10 years ago was one of the pioneers of passive house construction in the Pacific Northwest. And this is the job site of the Karuna House, which was one of the first single family houses in Oregon. And this image captures what Sam was all about. So he's here sharing the building science knowledge and the passive house science knowledge that he's learning with other builders and other practitioners and architects and engineers, and sharing this, what he called the unified field theory of construction. For him, Passive House brought all this stuff together and made it cohesive and powerful and understandable. And this is the Karuna House. This is the finished product. It was the first Passive House that I experienced. It was beautiful with its views of across wine country in Oregon. And I think it inspired a lot of people about what Passive House could be. Sam was also the first president of the Passive House Alliance US. He's pictured here on the left, and he served on the board of Passive House Alliance US along with Graham Irwin, who's pictured at the right there. Graham was vice president, and this is a picture of in Innsbruck. You can see Mike Kernagis of FIAS there, and Zach from 10 years ago. We're at Innsbruck at the International Passive House Conference in this photo. And he was close with Betsy Pettit from Building Science Corporation, and of course, Katrine Klingenberg of FIAS, both as a supporter of their work and a beneficiary of their work and an advocate for Passive House and building science. Sam built a team at Hammer in Hand that include people that are now lifelong friends and people I cherish in my life. So Skylar Swinford there on the left, and Dan, and he's a master of Passive House consulting and modeling, and Dan Whitmore there on the right, who's a guru of Passive House construction. And a lot of the images I'm sharing are from Dan and Skylar as we've been speaking with each other over the last 24 hours. So one of the adventures that Sam went on, and one of the many adventures of Sam's life, was to do Passive House and high performance building consulting for the royal family in Bhutan. And he did this work with Dan Whitmore. And Dan has an anecdote based on this photo here that I wanted to share with everybody. Here's a fun pic of a silly moment in Bhutan. I was to his left. To the left of me was the Chief Justice of the Bhutanese Supreme Court. Adjoining tent held part of the royal family, and the next tent was one of the head lamas of the country. It was a wacky world which Sam loved and made sure his friends could enjoy with/because of him. And I want to just close with some words from Graham Irwin. And Graham says, Sam Hagerman was a great friend and a hero and a role model to me. His work in Passive House was technically and aesthetically excellent, but the way he worked was even more exemplary. He truly cared about what he was doing and for the people he worked with. He mentored and empowered his employees to become the consummate and competent professionals they are today, and dedicated his business and used his influence to make the world a better place. Rest in peace, my friend. We'll miss you terribly. Here's to Sam.
Cheers.
I think it's necessary that we do unmute at this point, Zach, and give a toast to the proud life he lives.
Hear, hear.
Here's to Sam.
To Sam.
Here's Sam.
Cheers. Cheers. Here's to Sam. God love him.
Here's to Sam.
Thank you, everyone.
More like may his legacy live on.
Yeah.
We all aspire to be a little bit like Sam. We'll be in a better place. Thanks, Zach. Just to change gears, do you want to have?
Yeah. All right, you ready for a change of gears? Here we go.
Thanks, Zach.
Let's see. All right. Well, thank you to Sam, and thank you to the community, and all of this that we're creating together. And that's going to be my pivot to this thank you to the companies who make this possible. So big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxtingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minotaur All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, StoCorp, and Zola Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, and our patron sponsors are BR+A Consulting Engineers, Brennan Installation and Airtightness, Inotech Windows and Doors, and US Engineered Wood, T-Stud. Please check out our podcast. So this week's episode is with Talina Edwards, who's a leader in Australia of passive house design. She is the designer of the award-winning Owl Woods Passive House project, and combines high-performance building physics with biophilic design. Really cool stuff. So that's on the podcast right now. Tomorrow, the Global Passive House Happy Hour will feature Natalie Leonard, and she'll be presenting about bringing Passive House to the mainstream tomorrow. It's going to be a great presentation. We just saw a run through of it before this show. Please join us tomorrow. And then next week at Construction Tech Tuesday, we have Sandra Roller of Cornerstone Architecture joining us to speak about the technique, the technique and the technology of Little Mountain co-housing. And finally, actually, one day before that Construction Tech Tuesday, sorry, I should have put this in a different order. On Monday night, we have the She Who Constructs Summit, a special Passive House Accelerator summit about women in passive house construction. And our summit sponsor for that is Walsh Construction. So a big thank you to Walsh Construction for that support. Thanks.